Hello and welcome back to the online lectures for the Prepare and Imagine models. Today we are going to go over the actual Imagine model. We'll go over some of the things that I expect you to do for the paper. We're also going to go over some of the associated lessons that come along with the Imagine paper. These will include looking at PERT charts as well as looking at leadership styles, how to recognize your own, and how to manipulate others' leadership styles. That sounds really bad, I know, but you gotta know it. Anyways, let's start off. Let's just go right into it. The Imagine model is essentially your treatment plan for how it is that you are going to address the problems that you have identified in the Prepare paper. That's exactly it. This is your project. This is describing how you're going to, what your project is going to be, how you're going to actually carry it through, and what kind of things will you do to make sure that you're prepared in case of catastrophic failure. We'll get into all of those things in just a second. So again, going over the Imagine model, it is very much just like the Prepare model in that it's another forced acronym that probably isn't going to help you, but it's just kind of one of those things that makes it easier to talk about. So we start off with an innovative idea. This is where you would describe your project. Next, you look at mustering support and formulating action systems. We'll get into that in just a second. We identify our assets. Our assets are primarily the space that we have available, the money we have available, the time and the energy that you have available. From there, you specify goals, action steps, how to attain them. This is where we'll start talking about PERT charts and how you can use those to help manage your project. Next, you implement the plan. You actually make things move forward. You neutralize opposition. We're going to talk a little bit about how we neutralize opposition, and there will be opposition. So we'll talk about some of the ways that you can prepare yourself for it and take it on when it comes along. And then finally, we'll evaluate the progress that you make. Let's get started with your innovative idea. This is where you would follow up from the Prepare model. And as you guys recall, at the end of the Prepare model, it talks a lot about what are your options. So this is where Imagine picks up saying, well, this is the option that we're going to use. This is what starting with an innovative idea is. This is where you've said, this is the macro level change that we want to have happen. And from there, you say, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. But you also need to ask yourself, can it be reasonably implemented? It's got to be something that is reasonable, that is feasible, something that you can actually get done. Because I don't want this to be some sort of theoretical exercise. You are actually going to go out there and make a change in the community. So none of this theoretical bullcrap. I want you to actually go out and do something, which means you've got to pick something that's feasible. All right, next is you muster support. You muster support and you formulate action systems. So this is where you have to start asking yourself in your paper, who are your allies? And you might want to start listing who they are and start looking at the kinds of power that they have and also the kinds of leadership styles that they use. We'll get into leadership styles in just a second. But you need to know who your allies are, how strong of an ally they are, how useful will they actually be as you move forward in your project. Don't assume that you can do this project in a vacuum. You have to get other people helping you. Next, ask yourself, do you have enough help to actually make it happen? A lot of times, people don't. They think, well, yeah, we can do this. We've got 2 or 3 people and we're going to put this project together. We're going to make it happen. But it turns out that there's a lot of legal issues. There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of things that have to be done in order to move forward. If the right people aren't in place and involved in your timeline, it's not going to work out as well. So make sure you actually are able to answer, do you have enough help to make this project move forward? Next, identify your macro client system, your change agent system, and your target system. We'll be discussing this in class in greater detail, but I do want to remind you very quickly about what they are. In macro practice, you're not working with the same kind of dynamic of social worker to client dynamic that you would find. So where it's very easy to identify who is the client and who is the provider, who is making the change, and who is changing. In macro practice, you kind of have to look at it through some different eyes. You got to look at it through what is known as the macro client system, your change agent system, and your target system. Sometimes they are all the same thing, but many times they are not. So just as a simple definition, your macro client system is who is it that is going to benefit from the change that you are creating. And obviously there should be someone that you are benefiting. That was the whole point of the project, right? You want to benefit someone. You want to benefit a group or an organization. So who is it that is benefiting? Next, you look at who is the change agent system. The change agent system should include yourself, but it should be anyone else that is working on your project. And I mean anyone, not just you, not just student partners if you have student partners. It should be administrative professionals, whoever else is going to help pick up this project and make it happen. So make sure that you have identified who those people are. And then finally, who is your target system? Your target system is essentially what is going to be changing. What system will be changing? What organization will be changing? What community will be changing? So obviously this could all be one thing, right? So let's say we were going to take on a neighborhood and we want this neighborhood to get together and organize for some sort of like a block party. We're going to plan a block party to help increase the ability of people to get to know their neighbors, to build some sort of sense of cohesive community where we can talk to each other, we can trust in each other, we can look to each other for support. So you'd look at, all right, who's the macro client system? Who is it that's going to be benefiting? And in this case, the person or the group of people that would be benefiting would be the community, right? Well, who is it that's going to actually make this change happen? Community members. And then who is it that we're trying to change? The community. So it's all one group, right? But let's say that you wanted to work with, say, the mentally ill, right? So we want to do something for them. There have been some interesting projects in the past where people have worked on improving housing units for them. So the macro client system would be the severely and persistently mentally ill. The change agent system might be whatever organizations are helping to put together the housing units. It could be the students, it could be all of the construction workers. Anyone that is going in there to help renovate and put together better living facilities for the mentally ill. But the target system itself is actually the apartments and whoever runs those apartments or whoever owns them. So as you can see, they can be three separate individuals or three separate groups as well. But just for the sake of understanding how you can actually move forward, it's important that you're able to identify those things. All right, next, we are going to talk about leadership issues. So there are 5 different kinds of leaders that are identified in the book. And I want you to pay very close attention to them because you're going to run into each of these people at some point in your career. I'm sure some of you have already run into some of these people. But the idea is when you're doing macro practice, you've got to be a little bit smarter. You can't just say, oh, this leader is such a climber. They're so self-obsessed and they so cut other people down and they're such terrible bosses or they're terrible leaders. You don't just get to whine and complain about it now. You're a social worker and you are working in systems, so when you recognize that you have a climber in your group or within an organization that you really need to convince to get on your side or convince to change, you've got to be able to understand them. You've got to be able to manipulate them if you need to. So let's look at who they are, what they're like, and what are some of the things that you can do when you run into them. So the first one is the climber. The climber is identified as the type of leader or manager who is self-obsessed, who tends to fight rising stars, so that they kind of want leadership for the sake of having leadership. Uh, they want the glory, they want the power, and anyone that they see as a threat, they will clip their wings. I'm sure many of you guys have known people like this. I know I have. I met, uh, I had a supervisor who was, I still get quiet talking about him because it was like working for someone who was domestically abusive. He would hang out outside of our offices. Like if I went into one of my therapist's office and was talking to her, like he would hang out outside our door to see if we were talking about him. He would try to fire people if he thought that they were getting too good at their job, or he would try to find all kinds of ways to get rid of people. He was vindictive, and if you got on his bad side, like he would haunt you, and he would create all kinds of problems for you, not just within the agency, but even after you left. Like he would badmouth you to the whole community. It sucked working for this guy. Really, really sucked. I'm sure many of you have similar stories, similar people that you've known. But let's think about this. How is it that you work with a climber? Well, you find this person, you talk to their ego, you talk them up, and you talk to them about ways that you can make them seem like they are better. So essentially, you have to sell them your ideas in a way that makes them think that they came up with the idea. Now, one really quick, easy way to do this is that you can offer multiple solutions to these kinds of people. You can bring up a problem to a climber and say, hey, look, we've recognized that this is a problem. And I've thought of 3 different solutions. One could be a really crap solution, another one could be a really good one, but really expensive one, and then 3 is the solution that you really want to sell. And you explain all of those things to the climber. The climber will get to listen, and you've already set it up so that you know which one they will choose. And once that's done, they get to pick which one they're going to use, and you get to move forward saying, all right, our project is moving forward, and they get to say, well, we had this wonderful idea, and let them take credit for it. Not because you just want to kiss their ass, but really because you still need them on your side in some way or another. Okay, the next is the conserver. This is another person who's a little bit self-obsessed, but they don't like rocking the boat. It's very easy to take on this kind of leadership style. It's the kind of person that gets in charge of a system and then tries to make it as manageable as possible, and they're afraid of change because those changes make their lives more difficult. They don't want to rock the boat because the boat's finally floating. I just want to keep it floating. And that's kind of their deal. So you have to sell solutions to conservers in ways that will help them see and understand that this particular project is going to make their life easier. This change will be easy to undertake, it will be easy to implement, and by the end of the day, they get to say, oh, life is easier, and then if you can save money even, wonderful. That's one of those things that a lot of leaders, especially organizational leaders, they listen to. How is this going to affect the bottom line? It's just something you've got to learn to deal with. It seems inhumane, but that's the reality of the world in which you will work. They've got to have money. If they don't have money, things just won't work. You won't have a job. And so, again, the conserver is the kind of person who's just like, we have a steady flow, we have a steady movement, let's just keep things steady. Okay, so that's about all the time I have. We will come back in our next video and discuss the zealot, the advocate, and the statesperson, as well as the next steps in the Imagine paper.